All right, eighth grade, so here is the deal. Multiplying fractions is actually the easy version of doing anything with fractions. So you know if you add and subtract, you have to find a common denominator. That's super crappy. However, when we multiply and divide, you just get to multiply straight across. All you have to do is remember the exponent rules. So we are going to go through this, and it's actually fairly easy. So 3 times 8. Ooh, and before I multiply straight across, nope, actually, we're going to multiply this one straight across, and then we'll work out. So 3 times 8 is going to be, oh, why is my pen not working? Here we go. 24, and then we add our exponents, x to the 5th, and then it's going to be over 30x squared. Now, this we can reduce. So I can take my 24 and my 30 both down by, divide them both by 6. Yep, so 24 divided by 6 is 4. And 30 divided by 6 is 5. And then my exponents, there's 3 extra on the top. So remember, we just have to add and subtract those. Okay, so that makes that life easy. Now, what I think is easier about fractions is when we reduce early. So remember, you have to do diagonals. So that's a 1, that's a 3, that's a 1, that's a 4. And so we can just multiply straight across. And so I get 3 over 4. And then I can go ahead and start simplifying as much as I want. I think it's easier if you just multiply across then reduce later. So that would be y to the 6th over, y to the 6th. So those are going to cancel out. So I end up with just 3/4 on that one. Awesome. Okay, so I know that this seems a lot more complicated, but we're still just multiplying straight across. However, we can reduce early. So let's go ahead and take out what we can. So I am going to simplify as much as I can. So the numerator up on this first equation, I'm going to take out a 3. I'm going to be left with x plus 2. All right, on the bottom, I'm going to take out a 3 again. I'm going to be left with x squared plus, that's going to be 6x plus 9, which can actually simplify down even more. And it's going to be 3 out on the front, and it's going to be x plus 3 and x plus 3. Okay, so then for my second fraction, I am going to factor out the top. So it's going to be, it's minus, so it's one of each. So it's x minus 4 and x plus 3. And on the bottom, I've got x plus 2 and x minus 2. Okay, so now I need to, just like I reduced fractions and I went diagonals, I'm going to do the same thing. So x plus 3 and x plus 3 cancels. X plus 2 and x plus 2 cancels. Now, if I have the same thing on the top and the bottom, that actually also cancels. So what am I even left with? On the top, I've got x minus 4. On the bottom, I've got x plus 3 and x minus 2. Now, you could go back and then factor this all out. I'm going to actually have you just stop right there, okay? Working on the next one. So since this second number is not a fraction, we actually just put it over 1, and then we multiply straight across. Let's look at the bottom and see what we can factor it down to. We're going to do w minus 3 and w minus 4. So that means canceling out is my w's minus 4's, and that would be it. So on the top, I've got 2w squared over w minus 3. Easy enough. Put it in parentheses or don't really care. All right, so now we have division. Now, dividing fractions is the same thing as multiplying, except you keep change flip. Remember that? So you keep the first one, which would be x plus 3, and I'm factoring, x minus 3. Okay, on the bottom, I would have x plus 2 and x plus 3. Oh, I already see something I can cancel out. Okay, and now I change it to times. And then remember, we flip the second one. It's the reciprocal, the multiplicative inverse, or the reciprocal. So on the top, which is actually the bottom, I'm going to have x minus 4 and x plus 2. And now on the bottom, I'm going to have to pull out 4x, and I'm left with x minus 3. Okay, so what can I cancel? This cancels here. This cancels here. Oh, and I'm left with x minus 4 over 4x. Perfect. Next, one thing I want you to remember is that x minus 4 and 4x, you cannot divide anything out, you can't reduce anything, because on the top it only has the x in one location and not in both. If x was in both, then we could take an x out of everything, but we can't currently. All right, so second problem. We've got, on the top, I'm going to do m plus 2 and m minus 2. On the bottom of the first one, the denominator, let's see. I'm going to pull out a 2m. I'm left with m minus 2. I'm just going to cancel those guys right now. Okay, then we change it, since it's division, we change it to multiply and then flip. Okay, so on the top I've got 4, and then that becomes m plus 11. On the bottom, I'm going to pull out a 3m, which would be 2 minus m. Okay, is there anything else I can cancel? Let's go ahead and combine like terms and see what we've got. So I've got m plus 2, and let's leave those in parentheses. M plus 11. Oh, so when you multiply, basically this goes straight across, and so you're just like making it one big long fraction and rearranging. So I'm going to throw that 4 out in front. Okay, on the bottom I've got 2m times 3m, which is 6m squared, and 2 minus m. So now I can look and decide, is there anything else I can cancel? And actually there is, and that would be just knocking my 4 and my 6 down a little bit. So final answer, 2. M plus 2, m plus 11 over 3m squared, and that would be 2 minus m. Now I want you to be careful, because many people think that these two will cancel, but they're not exactly the same. So if they're not exactly the same, see if you can factor out a -1. In this case we can't, because it would change this to a minus 2, but we can't factor out a -1, so that's the answer is what we have left. Okay, so division. Remember, we're keeping the top, so on the top let's factor out a 3. That leaves me with x squared plus 8x plus 12. Okay, can I keep going even farther? I absolutely can. That would be x plus 6 and x plus 2. Okay, I'm now done with the top. On the denominator, I can take out a 3. That would be 2x plus 3. And since we are dividing, I change it to multiply, and instead of putting the 1 on the bottom, I'm actually going to put it on the top because I have to flip my fraction, and I get x plus 2. Let's cancel out what we can. So these cancel as my diagonals. These are on top of each other, they cancel. So I'm left with x plus 6 over 2x plus 3. Can't factor anything out. Those are my final answers. Okie dokie. So my numerator over here goes in, that would be minus 3, and minus 3 again, and then over 12n, and it's going to be times, and I'm going to flip it, so I'm going to put the 1 on the top, and that would be n minus 3, and I can cancel, yay! So anything times 1 is itself, so it's just n minus 3 over 12n. Again, you don't necessarily need to put the parentheses on top. I don't think your answer keys on your worksheet have those, but those are there for you. Enjoy!